Hello and welcome to Jason Live. My name is Patrick Shea. We're back once again with our STEM Career Series, where we connect you with role models in science, technology, engineering, and math. Today's STEM role model is cybersecurity consultant James Bryant. James has degrees in electrical engineering and industrial administration. He's put that education to use helping organizations implement technology, develop strategy, and improve their operations. He's worked on projects for the Department of Homeland Security, the Department of Energy, the Department of Defense, the FBI, and many other organizations. On top of all that, he's actively involved in efforts to increase the numbers of minorities pursuing careers in engineering. We're going to hear about all that and more in just a moment. But before we do, I want to remind everybody out there that today's event is live and interactive. You can use the box just below this video to ask us questions and participate in our polls. We hope to get as many of you involved in the program as we can today. Right now, it's time to get James involved in the program. Welcome, James. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Patrick.
Awesome.
And hello, everyone.
All right. Well, we're going to kick it right into our questions from students. And here's our first one to get us going. It's from Sebastian. And he wants to know, what do you do in your job? What are your responsibilities? And how long have you been doing it?
Okay, that's a good question, Sebastian. Actually, I've been doing this particular cybersecurity consulting activity for not very long, actually, less than 2 years. And what cybersecurity is about, it's really two words. It's cyber and security. So cyber, of course, is the internet, the World Wide Web, etc. And then security is really like a blanket to protect from harm and danger. And what I'm doing right now is associated with trying to install cybersecurity tools to monitor activities over the internet and over software tools to make sure that no malicious activity or those types of events take place.
So put this into kind of a larger context, both in terms of just overall security for the nation, for corporations, for organizations, and in your personal career. You said that this was kind of a new thing, cybersecurity specifically for you. How does this fit into the bigger picture?
That would be a good question. If you could pull up this particular graphic that we talked about, security, as I mentioned, is really about protecting and to make sure that we as a nation, we as individuals are not harmed. And so this graphic here is really showing you the different types of security and the threats that we face on a daily basis. And you see nuclear, you see radiological, you see chemical, you see transportation, biological, and what's called critical infrastructure. And so all of these are particular types of threats that we face. And way up in the top right-hand corner, you see cybersecurity. And so cyber, in many ways, it really impacts a lot of these other ones because, as you know, the computer, the World Wide Web really interfaces with a number of things, and computer systems control and manage a lot of these things. So having a strong cybersecurity program is very critical for both the government, for educational institutions, for private companies. And even in our own homes, we have to be very aware of putting good cybersecurity practices in place.
So I think it's important to note, why is cyber all the way up in that right-hand corner of this graph? I mean, I'm not sure if it's coming through on the web stream, but being up in there in that upper right-hand corner means that it is highly likely to happen, a cyber attack, and also it has very high consequences. So talk about that for a minute. I mean, that makes it one of the kind of scariest things on this graph.
That's right. That's what I was saying earlier, is that the computer really controls a lot of activities from your power plants, your manufacturing facilities. All of these things have computers to operate some of the critical kind of activities. Your financial institution, your banks, and all these things, they really have computers that are behind the scenes doing a lot of the work. And so if there are attacks to some of these particular systems and networks in these particular environments, then the potential exists to really bring down some major activities or events. And so that's why if you looked at the graph there again, this is why it was way at the top up there, that it has a high consequence of damage, and the likelihood of cybersecurity occurring is very high as well.
Mm-hmm.
And you compare this to, say, nuclear, which also is really has a higher consequence per se if you have a nuclear bomb or something, of course, but the likelihood of this happening is much lower.
So our next question here from Jessica and Ismail: why is your job important, and is it hard for you? I mean, you just kind of made the case for why it's a critical element right now. Is it hard?
Well, it's this whole topic is very critical, as I mentioned, very important to companies, to individuals, to governments all over the world. And it's hard because if you can imagine that as companies and governments put practices in place to protect their vital assets over the internet and over the computers, there are other folks out there that are trying to do damage to those very things that they're trying to protect. And so it's almost like it's a competition in the sense that there are what are called black hats, these individuals that try to hack in and try to do damage to various networks that are trying to do these things. And so what cybersecurity specialists always are on their guard to do is to make sure that they're on top of any potential things that could do damage to their infrastructure, their computer systems, their networks, etc.
We've got a really interesting question here next from Adriana. She wants to know, how does cybersecurity tie into STEM? Does it tie into all of the elements, science, technology, engineering, math? Where does cybersecurity fit into that mix?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, if you think about it, the internet is very critical. The computer networks are very critical to pretty much every area of our life nowadays. And if you think about how this intersects with STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, that intersection is always there. That cybersecurity, protecting these different assets, these chemical plants, these laboratories, these schools, for example, it really intersects with all of these areas. And so STEM fits into cybersecurity definitely.
So our students out there, particularly Dawson and Jessica, clearly Facebook users, they want to know what you think about Facebook and how much people get hacked on there. What do you have to say about Facebook?
Okay, let me say this. I'm not a Facebook expert. My kids are much better than me, so I'm not going to make any bad things or make any bad remarks about Facebook per se. But what I will say is to just be vigilant, be aware, and be careful as you communicate over social media and talk with friends and chat with others, et cetera. Just always be aware that some of the people that may say that they're nice, they may not be nice, and so you always have to be aware of this and have a protective kind of mindset as you engage over social media outlets.
Somewhat related question here from Anne. Here, not talking about Facebook, but personal financial information. She says, I've heard that people can gather information about me without me knowing it. For example, when I check into a hotel and give the desk clerk my credit card to swipe. How do the crooks do this, and how can I protect my personal information, such as her credit card number, from such thieves?
Okay, it sounds like she's very aware of what's happening nowadays. If some of you have probably heard on the news here recently, there's been a lot of talk about what's happened with Target. Target had a breach with, I think the number was over 70 million credit card holders that some information has been breached through individuals hacking into systems and getting information on the personal level on card holders. And so it's always something to do. as individuals, what you can do always is check your receipts, your transactions as you go and buy something with your credit cards. Make sure that you look at your bill, look at your statements to make sure that there's nothing on there that you didn't really charge. And what you do, of course, after that is you need to call and let someone know. But as I said, there are these bad guys out there that are always trying to find ways to get around and to get in and access personal information, and that's why these companies have to spend a lot of time and a lot of money and a lot of effort to make sure that our personal information is protected.
So we're going to shift away a bit from kind of the general cybersecurity questions and get back to some of the questions that relate directly to projects that you've been working on. Jana wants to know, do you conduct project-based work where you collaborate with others, or is most of what you're doing kind of solo?
Okay, so working as a consultant, a lot of the work is really project-based, team-based, and so if you looked at what I wrote in my bio, in a sense, I said that right now, as young people, make sure that you do things in a team environment, that you work with others on the team, that you develop your communication skills, because what you'll find out as you go into college or school after high school, you're going to find that you're working on teams and trying to solve problems. This particular picture right here, actually, this is a project at one of the Department of Energy National Labs. This is the Sandia National Lab. This facility here is it's called NESAC or NISAC, depending on how you pronounce it, but it's the National Infrastructure Simulation and Analysis Center. This particular organization, this particular center focuses on looking at attacks to our infrastructure. So if there's something that would happen, say, to our oil and gas supply system, this particular center they have sophisticated models that do analysis of the impact in our supplies of certain chemicals, certain gases, et cetera, and they do this for different types of scenarios. And so, for example, and we had the hurricanes that occurred a while back. This particular center could do analysis to determine the impact to the nation, and they could even do financial analysis to try to determine what the impact would be to the country.
So I know you've shared some pictures here of some of these national labs and uh, buildings like the one that you just described. Tell us what your role was. It seems like you've been involved kind of from the get-go on several of those projects. What were you doing specifically to help those get created and operational?
Okay, the NESAC facility that we just looked at the picture, I was actually supporting my client, which was the Department of Homeland Security, to help with the construction activities. The Department of Homeland Security was actually the owner of or paid the bill basically to have this constructed for the nation. And my role was really to work as what's called the owner's representative, to work with the building team to make sure that this particular facility was constructed according to plan. You see here in the photo, this is the team, and you see we're looking at some pictures or some blueprints in a sense. And this particular photo we were just looking at was really nearing the completion of this particular project. And there's a number of things that take place with this, from the basic foundation to the electrical work to the mechanical work to all the wiring and telecommunications. And so as a project manager, you have to provide that kind of oversight. This particular picture here is actually another facility. This is in Maryland. The prior picture actually was in New Mexico, but this one here is in Maryland, and this is actually on an Army base in Maryland. And this is NBAC, which stands for, it's a big word here, it's the National Biodefense Analysis and Countermeasures Center. And so this particular facility was really the first facility built under the new Department of Homeland Security that was designed to do work in the biological area. And so this picture is actually just a little bit further in the construction, and this next picture is actually the final product, the finished product, and it's a very nice facility there on the campus of the the Army facility in Maryland. Some people call this some people actually made a comment about this, that it looked like a ship or something. So if you looked at it, it sort of looked like the hull of a ship, and so it got that type of name from some folks that looked at the
Yeah,
building.
it's on one of the web pages that those photos are from. They actually called that front of the building the prow, as if
Yes.
it were a ship. Yeah. All right. So next question is from Bianca. What is the one most important step you have to take to be prepared for your job?
Well, that's a good question.
Yeah, she's going to make you narrow it down to just one here.
I think the one most important step is to just be open to learn and to be willing to understand. Always take on new challenges and have a willingness to learn something new. And so, as you go into different activities in school and outside of school, just always have that mindset. I'm going to want to learn something new. I wanted to really get something new out of this. And I think if you have that particular thing, I think that would be very beneficial and valuable.
It's great advice. We're going to take a video question now. This is from Jaden.
What is your favorite part of STEM? Science, technology, engineering, or math?
Okay, so STEM, I think T for technology, because to me, technology is what we see and what we can touch in a lot of cases. And if you think about it, all the other ones really influence the T, the science, the engineering, and the math. They really influence the T, which is the technology. That's really the end product that we can see. But we really don't see the science that goes on behind the scenes. We don't see the engineering behind the scenes. We see the math behind the scenes. But what we usually see is the final product. We see this nice device, this nice new phone, or we see this new computer system. We see this car, something. But all behind the scenes, there's a lot of others involved to bring to visualization or to reality this new technology.
It seems like a good answer for somebody who got a degree in engineering, right?
That's right.
Yeah. So it's actually a good segue. We're going to transition now and talk about your career path, how you got to where you are today. And to get us kicked off there, we have a question from Izzy. He wants to know, when did you discover you were good at engineering, and why do you find it interesting? I think you probably answered the second part of that question in your last response, but when did you discover you were good at it?
Well, I think as a young person, I just had an interest in how things worked, tried to take things apart, tried to put them together. I was successful sometimes I wasn't. But as a young person, I just had an interest in trying to determine or figure out how things worked. And that's why I decided to go to school for engineering. And then once I started working in the field, I realized that this is really something I have an interest, have a passion for. And if for anything that you do, no matter if it's engineering or if you want to be a musician, etc., if you have a passion for it, you're going to really be good and you're going to excel in that area. So that's really the key thing is no matter what you pursue, just have a passion for it.
Leads us to our next question from Nicole, who has clearly read about not only your engineering degree, but you went back and got a master's in industrial administration. She wants to know what led you to connect those two degrees that you have, and what information would you give to those interested in pursuing a similar path?
Well, the advanced degree is more focused on business. And so I found that by having the engineering background and the understanding of how things work and being a good problem solver that you get really by being an engineer, as you go in and study something in, say, business, if you have that same kind of background of as far as problem solving, how to get things done, it's really helpful as you work in the business field as well. And so some of the projects that I talked about, I didn't necessarily work truly as an engineer on some of these. Some of these I worked on the business side. For example, the embed facility that you saw there, I actually worked in putting together some of the documentation. One thing was called the mission needs statement. This is really a document that describes why it's important to build this facility. And so I got involved in those kind of things and just beyond just the typical engineering things that you would think of. And so having the 2 degrees were really helpful.
Multi-talented. Our next question's from Andre. Wants to know, would you encourage young learners to pursue a career in cybersecurity? And if so, what would your advice be for them?
I would, because as I mentioned earlier, this is not going to go away. The president, the Congress, really companies all over the world, they all, this is really top of mind, really in all of their minds, how to protect their cyber assets. Because as I mentioned before, the internet, the computers really play a critical, and it will even play more critical roles in how things get done, how we operate across the globe, how businesses operate, and we all have to be aware of this. And so there's always going to be some opportunities. And then as far as what you can do right now, there's a lot that you can look into on the internet. YouTube, various things on Google have a lot of good information, a lot of good resources as far as cybersecurity and understanding more about it.
Great. We've got a video question next from Adriana.
When did you start to become curious with cybersecurity, and what got you interested?
Okay, so this has to do with being a consultant. I was working in some other areas, and this particular project came up, and I really decided I wanted to pursue it. And as I mentioned in my write-up, I said, this is one of the good things about being a consultant. It's also one of the tough things, because in some cases you take on a new task and you may not know everything, and so you have to ask a lot of questions. And so if you're not the kind of person that likes to ask questions, then it may be uncomfortable for you. So taking on new challenges and being open to make a mistake every now and then, that's what goes along with taking on new challenges. But the thing about it is just have the mindset that you're going to learn, you're going to grow, and you're going to develop. And so I wanted to develop in particular my skills and my knowledge and my awareness about cybersecurity.
All right, another video question here, this one from Stacia.
What would you recommend kids interested in cybersecurity do to get a head start in the field of work?
Okay, so if you have an interest in cybersecurity, I'm not sure what you have at your school, but talk with your teachers there to see what kind of things you can do at the school even. For example, think about your school. You have computer records there of all the students, you have the grades, you have personal information on all the students, all the teachers, etc. And so even at each individual school, there's activity, there's efforts underway to protect that information. Find out at your school what you can do to get engaged and maybe come up with some ideas at your school even in terms of cybersecurity. Think about this as well. This is called the Internet of Things, and basically your homes even. You may have seen commercials about how to protect and being able to turn your lights on, turn your alarm system on from your mobile phone. So all these things are different examples of why we have to have cybersecurity in place.
Makes sense. We've asked James a lot of questions already, but now it's time to turn around. He has some questions for you. It's time to jump into our polls, and here's our first one that James came up with. He wants to know, if you were a cybersecurity consultant, what password would you recommend to your client? Would you recommend A, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? Seems easy to remember, right? Would you recommend B, STEM 141 @ Would you recommend C, STEM with a capital S, and the rest are all lowercase? Or D, my name is James? So you've got a few different options there, and I would focus not so much on what the specific password is here, but what they consist of. All numbers, a mix of numbers and letters and symbols, capitals, not capitals. What do you think there? What makes for a good password? A, B, C, or D? We've got answers coming in. I can see the results coming in here, James. So far,
Okay.
100% think B. I don't know if we're going to stump them on this one. Why don't you tell us the right answer?
Wow, this is impressive. B. Yep. But
B is
believe it
the
or
right
not,
answer. Why
yes,
is that the right answer?
because of what you just said. You said that it has the combination of letters and numbers, and you also see the special character there. But believe it or not, people use just A, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Surveys have been taken, and individuals just use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's very easy for somebody to hack and get into your system. But believe it or not, it's done.
So we're looking at a slide here about the amount of time it would take for kind of a brute force crack of a password. And what are we seeing here, and how does that relate to the poll question?
See, it's the same kind of thing, I think, because it's giving you some examples of how long the password is, and it gives you some information about if it's a lowercase or uppercase, etc., and then if it's numbers and symbols, etc. And it's giving you an idea as to how long it would take to try to hack your particular password. And you see that the combination of the numbers and symbols, etc., and the letter, lowercase, uppercase, really, that's where you see the longest time that would take for somebody to hack. And think about this too. It's actually not just somebody trying to hack, but there's also computer systems and tools that are available to try to hack different systems. So it's not just necessarily somebody just spending hours and hours trying to do this, but there are computer systems that can do the same activity also.
Yeah, so it's not just somebody guessing. It's an automated process that's
Right.
trying to get at that, right? All right, let's move on to our second poll question that James came up for us. What magazine did James read when he was in middle school and junior high school? Was it A, 16? Was it B, Game Informer? Was it C, Popular Science? Or was it D, National Geographic Kids? Let's see, put your answers into the system now, and we will see in just a moment what magazine James read way back when that potentially influenced his future career. What do you think? We've got results coming in. Popular Science is in the lead, has about 2/3 of the response. National Geographic Kids has some answers. 16 coming up empty. Game Informer as well. 80% now think Popular Science. James, what's the right answer?
It is Popular Science, so you are correct.
They are right again.
I did read National Geographic, but not the kids version. I did. My parents, they did subscribe to National Geographic, and so I really enjoyed looking at National Geographic as well.
But Popular Science was number one on your reading
Yes,
list.
that was my number one reading list, though.
All right, moving on to poll number 3. What sport did James coach? Was it A, baseball, B, basketball, C, badminton, or D, soccer? Kind of getting into the personal side of James here with this poll question. I have to admit, I don't know the answer to this one. We're all going to be surprised. Basketball has taken an early lead in the results, 100% so far.
No,
Badminton, a surprise vote for badminton there.
one person.
Tough to tell. It's all in percentages on this end. So,
Okay.
so far, nobody thinks baseball. Everything else is pretty evenly distributed. Basketball and soccer. Soccer just took the lead. We're all over the place on this one. Nobody really knows. James, what's the correct answer?
The correct answer is soccer.
Soccer.
And actually, my son was on the team too.
That always helps. And how long ago was that?
This was like 8 years ago, something like that.
All right. We've got time for just a few more questions here from our audience, so let's take a look at the next one. This one's from Herschel. Bring it up here, and let's get rid of the poll results. Herschel wants to know, is creating a learning environment where one child has one computer the preferred means of advancing a 21st century workforce? So we've got an education, a STEM education question for you here, James. What do you think?
So did Herschel say is creating a learning environment where there's a computer for one child?
Where every kid has access to a computer.
Oh, okay. I think that's a very good environment to really facilitate the environment that we're in, because everything's really happening over the internet. We're getting closer and closer to our neighbors around the globe because of the internet, because of the World Wide Web, et cetera. So as young people, we have to have that environment for them to learn. But at the same time, it's very important for the actual teaching, and that's why I really am a strong advocate for teaching and our teachers, and they do such a great job. So I think it's a combination.
Okay, completely different direction here. This question's from David, who wants to know, do you ever work with game consoles?
I do not. I do not work with game consoles at all. My son, he's a big Xbox fan, and so he does a lot of things there. But as far as cybersecurity work, no, nothing there at all.
All right, next one from a group of students in Mrs. Bound's class. They want to know, how do computer viruses work?
Okay, well, the viruses, they do different things. It's almost, if you think about a virus that you have in your body, what's it do? It goes in there and it tries to find a weakness or vulnerability in your system. And computer viruses, they do a similar kind of thing where they get into a system and they identify certain weaknesses or certain vulnerabilities based on whatever the way that the virus has been designed, and it attacks, and the objective, of course, is to do some damage to that system. And so there's various viruses that are out there, and as I'm sure you're aware of, there's something to combat these viruses, which is antivirus software. And so that's why it's important that you have this software on your computers, your computer systems, and individual systems, and also companies have this for all of their employees and their computers.
On a related note, once you're infected, how do you get viruses off of your computer?
Well, there's a whole process for getting viruses off computers as well. So it's back to the same analogy of our bodies. We take something to try to eradicate or get that virus out of us. And so viruses, the good guys, the companies that design software to go in and look for viruses and to put things in place to get rid of them, the software, a lot of times what it does is it quarantines the virus. And if anyone has ever seen this before, you may get a warning that says you have a virus on your system, and then it says, do you want us to run the software program? It runs the software program, it quarantines that particular virus, and it puts it somewhere safe, and it lets you know that the virus has been put in a safe position, a safe place, not to do any more harm to your computer system.
We are running low on time, but we have time for just, I think, one more question from our audience, and then we'll head into the wrap. William wants to know, where do you think the field of engineering and STEM in general is heading in the future?
Whoa, that's a good question. Well, STEM, it sounds like he really is real read on this particular topic. Just the other night on the State of the Union address, actually, President Obama mentioned the importance of STEM, because STEM is really what fuels innovation for our country. And if anybody knows this, we still lead the world in innovation. The best ideas still come out of the U.S., but we're starting to get behind them in terms of educating those in the STEM field, and so we need to really educate more. And so for the future, we have to make sure that we are educated on STEM fields, because, as I said, STEM is really the key to innovation, and innovation is really what's key to a thriving and vibrant economy.
And we're looking at a picture here. You're there in the background, but here's a group of kids that could be the future engineers and scientists and mathematicians of tomorrow. And I know that getting kids involved in engineering is something that's near and dear to your heart. Can you talk a little bit about that before we wrap up?
Okay, real quick. So this picture was taken in Washington, D.C., and this was a group of high school students from a local school in Washington, D.C., who took them down to it's called a Science and Technology Conference. And everyone, I'm sure, has been to a science fair, and you can imagine this was basically a science fair that was demonstrating various science and technology that was being used to address homeland security challenges. And so they had a chance to go around to all these tables and interview, because I made sure that they were going to have to interview and ask questions. How does this particular device use STEM? And they had to go around and ask questions and interview the individuals at the different tables. They also had a chance to try out some of the different technologies as they were going around the booths. And so the picture was just a group of the group of the young people from the high school that we attended this particular conference, and it was very nice, very well received by the students and the school.
And why is it important for you personally to be involved in that type of activity?
Really, just I've always had an interest in this from way back when I was in college. I started neighborhood tutoring programs, and just went from there. We actually started a school, and always had an interest in trying to get more people, young people, to have an interest in furthering their education, in particular in the areas of STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, and to also let them know it's not as hard as you think it is. If you really have a passion for it and think about how important it is, I think that you really would have an interest in to give it really give it a try. So just always had an interest in doing this.
Well, we thank you for joining us today and sharing your passion for STEM and teaching us all about the work that you do. It's really fascinating, and we appreciate you taking the time.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you all that are watching over the web.
All right. If you want to hear more about another fascinating STEM career, be sure to come back next week when we connect with archaeologist and oceanographer Mike Brennan. Mike's a former Jason Argonaut, and his Jason experience inspired him to pursue his love of both history and ocean exploration. He looks for better ways to protect and manage shipwreck sites, amongst a lot of other things. These days, you can find him leading expeditions all over the world on board the exploration vessel Nautilus. So be sure to join us next Thursday, February 6th at 1:30 p.m. Eastern to learn more about Mike's current research and STEM career path. That's all the time we have for today. Thanks for joining us. For Jason Learning, my name is Patrick Shea, and we'll see you next time. Take care.